What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode. And those of you who pay close attention will have noticed that there was no upload last week. And so I want to reassure all of you I'm okay. Those of you who would have been worried about me, oh my God, what's happened? Gavin has missed an episode. It must be the end of the world. But as it turns out, I caught a virus last week and I had just finished recording the interview with our guest that you're about to hear today. And I noticed that my throat was a little bit sore, and I put it down to just, speaking for an hour with this person. But it actually got worse and worse, and I started to develop a temperature. And the next day, I had a voice that sounded like Barry White. Those of you who know the old 60s music, you will recognize who I'm talking about. And I thought I might have been able to record the intro to this towards the weekend, but actually, no, it got far, far worse. And I ended up going to the VHI Swift clinic to try to kind of get sorted. And I spent hours in there, and that just made matters worse. And I ended up in a pretty bad way. So sorry I've missed it. And I just want to give you a couple of updates before I introduce our guest today. And you would have gotten these updates last week, so I'm kind of combining it today into an episode. First of all, if you hear anything in the background, I have a new puppy living with us in the house, and so you might hear a little bit of a racket in the background. If you do, I might introduce you to our new dog, Oreo. But let me just tell you that before we get into the guest, I need to mention that I am closing out enrollment in my accelerator. This is the final week before I close the membership list for kicking off. This is going to be the June cohort that we kick off with. And really solid bunch of experienced people have signed up. And I'm looking forward to getting started on this one. It's going to be really, really interesting. And so if anyone out there listening at the moment has been, sitting on the fence, thinking about this, please don't delay any further. There is going to be a cutoff. I have to do a cutoff because I'm introducing everybody on the 1st of June, and I want to have a bit of preparation done for that. So that's the 1st of June. We're going to have like an official get together where we all meet up and stuff. But 2 weeks before that, so the 20th of May, that is actually the date that the whole thing starts. So I need people who are interested to be signed up before that date. So just letting you know in case you are sitting on the fence and thinking about it. Now let's get into the power of social media. I'm going to say the growing power of social media. And it's something that hasn't always impacted the property sector so much. But I'm noticing now that the amount of people that are consuming my content, first of all, but second of all, content related to property, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on TikTok, like there's just so many channels now, so many platforms. And it is no wonder with all of this attention on it, it's no wonder that certain personalities out there have become legitimate, celebrities and business icons in their own right. I'm talking about the likes of Ryan Serhant, who's based in New York City. There's also a guy that I follow called Inez Yilmazer, I think is his name. And he's a very kind of polite and well-spoken guy that takes you through these incredible, beautiful houses that are up for sale. House prices at 50 and 60 million and stuff like that. And so obviously that kind of content attracts huge audiences because everyone's looking for a bit of inspiration and motivation and things like that. But closer to home, you will probably have those of you who've been listening for a while, you will have remembered the conversation that I had with Owen Riley. Owen is an agent based in Dublin, and he's built up a very strong brand using social media, and he has a lot of recognition in the Dublin market. And I can remember when I was having that conversation with Owen, I thought to myself, well, I guess, it's for somebody like Owen, who's dealing in a lot of Dublin Docklands properties, it is probably, he's got a better chance of video picking up a lot of views because it's, the content is more international when it's in a city. And a city like Dublin obviously has a big kind of following, big history, things like that. And that's where I think today's guest is going to prove you wrong. It does not actually matter where you're based. It's the quality of the content that you put out there. And my guest today is Joanne Lavelle. of Michael Lavelle Estate Agents, and they're based in Dundalk, County Louth, here in Ireland. And Joanne has amassed a YouTube audience of over 7,000 subscribers. Now, take it from me, that is a very substantial audience for anybody in Irish property. Like me, with 4 years on this podcast and stuff, I've only got 700 odd followers on the podcast. So 7,000, you can imagine, is a large number. How has she achieved this? Well, that is what we're going to go into today. We're going to talk about her strategy. We're going to talk about the amount of data analysis that she does with her team. We're going to talk about the benefits that going into social media has created for her. And how, what's really interesting for me is when you go to put a house on view nowadays, you often get a lot of, the next door neighbors will pop in, and anybody who's curious at all will pop in. And so you get an awful lot of what I would call tire kickers. People that are not genuinely interested in the house, they're just there out of curiosity. Well, one of the things that Joanne has discovered is that that is not an issue when you have a YouTube channel that puts the first viewing basically online. And so people from all over the country, all over the world can actually inspect the property before they actually set foot in the property. And so you get much, much more, I suppose, intent. You get qualified leads. People know that this property is for them before they actually arrive to have the final check. We also cover some of the viral moments and some of the strategies she is using now to get some cross-platform, across her other social media platforms and stuff like that. So look, guys, this is a long intro. I'm going to cut through it now. So guys, without further ado, my conversation with Joanne Lavelle. Joanne Lavelle, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
I'm delighted to have you here, Joanne, and you're from Dundalk in northeast Dublin. But for anyone who's listening...
No, I'm from Dundalk in County Louth.
Sorry, yes, I just said northeast Dublin. Northeast of the country is what I meant. Yes. Yeah. And so, yes, straight into mistakes there, and we might redo that. What I'm going to say, though, is we have an international audience. We have people listening from all over the world, and a lot of them will have Irish roots and connections and stuff like that. But just for the people who will not know anything about you or the area that you're working and stuff, why don't you just give us a little sort of 30-second elevator pitch?
Okay, so I run Michael Lavelle Estate Agents. Michael is my dad, so we're second generation property business, okay? We sell and rent residential property, commercial property, agricultural property. We do valuations on properties, whether that's for a mortgage or whether that's for a divorce or whatever reason. There's many reasons, as you know, why you would need to value property. So we're almost full service. The only thing that we don't do is property management, block management. My dad, Michael, has been doing this for about 45 or 50 years. I've been back home with the business just over 20 years now. So we have a tight team of people who are property anoraks like me, and we do our thing. We are very proud to say that at this stage, we're dealing with third generation of families, that people come to us and come back to us. We don't really advertise for business. It's fairly organic, you know what I mean? It's either by referral or by repeats. Because we are a family business, we're an independent brand, very strong brand recognition here in the Northeast, and a really, really strong foundation of online presence to back that up.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, we're going to get into the online presence and stuff. I thought I'd just if you kind of can take us back, I like always to kind of establish a bit of context. So your dad is a property agent, we'll say, in the Dundalk area. You're growing up in that area. Was like property in the blood? Was it absolutely preordained that you were going to end up in property, did you think?
I tried to say no, I'll make up my own mind, but put it this way, I used to sell houses to my teachers in school. So
says a lot. Okay.
Nobody was safe. Yeah.
No.
It was kind of always a thing, but after school, I went to UCD and I studied arts. I studied Spanish and French. And then after that, I did a diploma in public relations in Dublin. But was still very determined that I wasn't going to go straight home, straight into the family business. Really wanted to, get experience and skills on a wider scale, and also generally within business, not just within property. So I ended up working in agencies, in public relations agencies in London and then in Dublin, which was fantastic because when you work in public relations, it's all about client support, client services, and it's all about communication. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just constant communication and customer care, which in the end is exactly how I spend my entire day now. Um, and then after living in London for a few years doing that, I came home to Dublin and did the same thing, worked in an agency called McConnell's Advertising for a few years, working in their public relations division. And again, customer care, looking after our clients, pitching for clients' support and clients' work. If somebody calls me to come and look at their house, it's effectively like a pitch. I'm
Yeah.
presenting my credentials. I'm pitching how I can help them. So it's definitely a move that has stood me in good stead in the work that I do now.
So because I noticed that you said you did property, is it property economics or something like that in Bolton Street as well?
Yeah, so I mean, I had a property qualification from one of the Institutes of Technology, but during the recession, I decided that that was a good time to dig my head into a bit more study, and I did the Bolton Street, now the TU Dublin, um, BSc in property studies. So a couple of your followers will be familiar with that course. It's a great course. And I did that during the dark days of the recession, which was kind of
Right.
fabulous because it was like a real-time learning experience of property economics. So every day was like, what's happening today and what's going to happen tomorrow? As the ship was going this way, we're learning about it. So it was fascinating, but it was really top line education for property. Loved it.
Yeah. Well, it's great. I went to Bolton Street. I studied
Yeah.
architecture there, and
Oh, did
then
you? Okay.
yeah. So although I left about 10 years before the recession or whatever, but so that was it. And then you're about 20 years in the family business at this stage. And
Yeah.
when I mean, we've been talking, we're going to get into the online marketing side of it and stuff like that. But presumably 20 years ago, you were just going into it, and it was kind of more of a traditional form of marketing. It was like, newspapers and magazines and shop windows and things like that. It's changed a lot since those days.
Oh, it's changed entirely. 20 years ago, you didn't have time to change how you marketed your product or marketed your brand. You just had to move the stock, move the product. It was Celtic Tiger era. Everything was sold before you even got your hands on it. It was just go, go, go. And then there was the dearth, the recession. And it was the recession. Nobody knew when
We were
or
coming
where
out
or
of it.
how it was going to end. So that was really the time when, although you weren't necessarily, I mean, I used the time to skill up to do another course and did another, few things to improve my own skills. But no business was going to be able to go out and spend a whole lot of money on, for example, a new website because God, you had to
Yeah.
hold on to the money.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Survival.
yeah, it was survival mode. But one of the things, and it comes down to, you know the way you ask, what is one of the pieces of advice that you get? Well, one of the pieces of advice, and I'll always remember, was for a long-standing client of ours called Declan. And he came in and he asked me to do something. And I said, I don't have experience of that. And he said, well, that's fine. I don't mind if you learn on this job on my time, that's fine. So then he said to me, don't be paralyzed. In recession, everybody gets paralyzed. You know, that way that you just
Yeah.
it's like when you
The
stay
deer in
hunched
the
up in the corner
headlights.
long enough, you
Yeah.
get stiff and it's harder to move. And he said it at just the right time because it was sort of at the beginning and not at the end. And I realized, okay, yeah, keep moving, keep learning, and keep finding ways for your business to achieve. And
Iterate.
that's something
Yeah.
that's really stood.
Yeah, that's
Get
that's good
paralyzed.
advice. It's yeah, I mean, there's what they call paralysis by analysis, where you're so busy kind of trying to work out what's the right move that you do nothing. I've seen it before with people that are looking to buy property, investors, and they're nervous that they'll make a mistake. And so they spend all of their time crunching numbers instead of
Mm,
actually taking action. Now, obviously, it's important not to buy the wrong property, but sometimes you can be so conservative that all you'll ever do is crunch numbers. You'll never actually take action because you'll be so
yeah,
busy. So yeah, taking action and not being sort of paralyzed by inaction.
yeah.
Um,
So
and go ahead, yeah.
yeah, so really, like it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think you're going to fail, you're going to fail.
Yeah, no, it's very
So you,
true.
you kind of you can't fall into that trap. So
Self-belief.
Self-belief. And sometimes it's hard in it when you're running a business to find it. Like there recently with COVID, that was another time when you really had to dig deep and find your self-belief. But it's the difference between getting up in the morning and getting on and finding ways to achieve, you know?
Absolutely. And tell us, Joanne, when you started to change the way you market the business, like tell us about the kind of evolution, I guess, of your marketing techniques and stuff. Because we're going to get into your YouTube, because now you have quite a few thousand YouTube followers. But before we get into that, like give us the evolution of your marketing sort of approach for the business.
Yeah. Well, Michael, my dad, had always spun a different way of doing things. He was always very good, a bit of a zeitgeist, finding the new vibe, you know. He was always very good at finding connection with people and finding new ways to connect with people. And that's so we've always done things a little bit differently in that sense, you know, whether it's that we used to put up cute little three-liners on our signs, you know, must have house, way before it was a thing. You know, we'd spend more, for example, on having unusual signs to stand out. Because if we stand out, our properties stand out. So it's all boats rise. We benefit, our clients benefit, the property benefits. So there's always been an element of we work differently. And that's for any independent business when you're competing with franchises. That is the be all. You have to do that. You have to find ways to be unique and find ways, just find the confidence to paddle your own canoe and just get up and do things.
Yeah.
Make decisions, go with it, try something new. What's the worst that can happen?
So, so it was in your DNA as a business, we'll say, that you did this kind of thing. But in terms of, when, there wasn't too many people with websites back in the day, and then all of a sudden everyone has them. Like, how do you differentiate yourself when everyone is kind of following the leader? Do you know? I mean, when were you guys looking at social media, for example, relative to what the rest of the market was doing?
Well, I will say, first off, we're very lucky here, particularly in Dundalk. We have the local enterprise office, which is sort of an IDA bolt on, and the LEO, the Leo office, and the Dundalk local enterprise office is particularly progressive. And they, for example, give you funding support for creating new websites. You do training on your social media and everything. And really, any business of whatever category or sector, if they're not plugged into their Leo in this country, they're missing a massive trick. So you can get up to maybe 50% of the price of a website paid for by the government if you follow the steps. So there is real help out there and real training and support out there. So I've always been happy to put up my hand and say, yes, thanks, I'll take that help.
Free money.
Yeah, but it helps you to grow and to learn and to do better, because the other thing is the technology has moved on so quickly. You have to keep changing.
Yeah.
You have to keep changing or you're in the rear tail lights,
So tell us, in terms of, give us an example. We were talking about, for example, a website, SEO and things like that. A lot of people, all of that kind of terminology it kind of goes over their head. They don't really kind of understand it. How much of your business is generated online and how much of it is through the traditional word of mouth and, just the fact that you're the local agent that everyone kind of knows?
Yeah, I'm not going to say that I will ever be able to accurately measure that, but I would say that probably 50% of my pipeline is from our online brand activity.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot.
And and then about the other 50% is split is legacy or knowledge, existing experience. And repeat business is huge for us, and referral is huge for us. That you do a job well once, you'll get an opportunity to do the job again
and again. Yeah.
If you screw it up or if you make little of your work the first time, you're not going to be asked again.
Yeah.
So that kind of credential is always, always really important to us. But in terms of light bulb moments, so the other time, obviously during the recession, there wasn't huge investment really by anybody in technology. For me, the big investment during that time was in education. So went back to Bolton Street, studied all of that stuff. And then coming out of the recession, the investment in technology and in marketing was more prominent. But there was a real light bulb moment for me during COVID. And we had this lady, we had sold her a house near where I live. And she called me and she said, lockdown was on. She called and she said, I've made a huge mistake. I'm out here. I'm not from here. I shouldn't have moved here. I'm lonely. I need to get back into town. Okay, it's lockdown.
Yeah.
How
No,
am I going to help this woman? And so I called over to her house. She sat outside. I went inside. And we had set up this YouTube video a couple of years before, just for a platform for sharing files between, if people needed files. It literally was a quiet little thing set up there. But I did a video of her house and I threw it up on that YouTube channel. And a few days later, a woman called me from County Wicklow. And she said, I phoned every Garda station from here to there, and they all said I could come. I'll be there in the morning. I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
So she turned up the next day. She looked around. Yeah, like, she's inside, I'm outside. It was all that kind of crazy time.
Yeah.
I won't say that it was strictly right. And she bought the house.
Wow.
And
All off
it was
the back
like,
of a video.
okay, I realized that the reason she did that is she got enough information from me, enough engagement, enough of an experience of that house to make that decision, to make that journey, which at that time was virtually unheard of.
Yeah.
And so then straight onto the internet, I got onto, the Camera Centre in Grafton Street. Love the Camera Centre in Grafton Street. And I said, right, guys, you need to sort me out a kit here. The kit arrived within the next day or two and got all set up. And then once I was able to, started doing proper virtual viewings. Now, It's evolved over the time, but it has been a complete game changer for my business.
And so how many, like in terms of the number of views and stuff like that, I would have thought that the Dundalk area, you wouldn't have had huge numbers of views, but do you get like strong viewings and things like that from people from outside? I suppose you don't really know where the views are coming from.
We know. We know. Yeah. So my three main sources are Ireland, the UK, and the US.
Oh, wow. So that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're my three key areas, but we're for obvious reasons, we're particularly focused on the domestic because the majority of buyers are here. But we do sell abroad. So, for example, we will have a property where people will see it, they'll engage with it, and they'll say, okay, it's worth my while to come, get on the plane, come over and check this out. Okay. And also that they'll have gained enough knowledge of us and trust of us that they'll say, okay, I'm going to call these guys, because when you're the other side of the world, it's a harder decision to make. But like we now, in the last couple of weeks, we've reached 7,000 subscribers.
We're the biggest. Number.
It's a huge number. We're the biggest YouTube channel for this sector, as far as I know, in Ireland. Wow. Okay. Brilliant. It's a huge part of our work. If you put all of the viewing hours back to back, it would take you 9.5 years to match our viewing hours. I mean, that's just incredible. Yeah. 9.5 years. But that's what it is. The engagement is very strong. So it's not just flick in, flick out. We want people, when they go to watch a virtual viewing, that they're going to get through at least half of it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's 5 or 6 minutes. That's huge in YouTube terms. Normally, 60 seconds, 120 seconds, 2 or 3 minutes, and you're gone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the engagement on the channel is very deep. And there's a whole load of things that contribute to that. It's not only the way the channel looks. It starts off with an introduction from me about how we work. There's a consistency within the channel. Everything looks good. There's good editing in it. The content is relevant. It has to be relevant. I don't want to piss people off with nonsense. So I'm circumspect about what we put on there. I don't want to fill it with junk. And that's really, really important. We have, on average in a month, something like 25,000 views. That's massive.
That is huge, yeah.
So of those 7,000 subscribers, a huge proportion of them are consistently engaged. And maybe some of them are just on looking for inspiration. Maybe some of them are looking for houses. There's a whole different range of reasons. And that's fine.
Yeah.
But obviously, we're giving them something that they need. I'll tell you a lovely story. I was in my local shopping mall a couple of weeks ago, and in this shop, when you pay, they ask you if you want to join the database, and you put your website. You put your email address. Yes. So I spelled out my email address, and the girl behind the counter was typing it in, and then she looked up and she goes, "It's really you." And I mean, I had this I had this YouTube moment, and yeah, it's me. What have I done wrong? And she just said, your channel inspires me that someday I will have enough money and I will call you and you will help me find my home.
That's fabulous. Yeah,
And
that's a nice
it's
story.
amazing. It's just even for a positive place for people to be, just to check out where's Joanne today. And if that's working for some people, I'm happy with that.
So, I mean, let's dive into some of the specifics there because, I mean, when you're putting out content, is it, I haven't, I must confess, I haven't actually checked out your channel other than watching the first video that is of you saying, hello, I'm, Joanne and stuff. But like in terms of the regularity of the posts and stuff, is it all selling client houses, or do you do those kind of here's a little something about the Dundalk area, or here's you can kind of make it more evergreen rather than it just being a house that's on the books?
Yeah, so we do a combination of things. It is probably 75% selling stock, okay?
Yes.
But we will also do, for example, recently I went to a property and it had a fantastic kitchen and the layout of the kitchen and the look of the kitchen. So I did like a little 5-minute masterclass on a kitchen, okay? Or on a cabinet, a display cabinet, so there is that evergreen how to work your space more. It's not really intended as a you should do this or a you must aspire to this, because I kind of come out in a bit of a rash about that. I kind of feel,
Yeah.
these are real houses. Real people have made that kitchen look nice for viewing. And so it's real stuff highlighted and good. When I see I'm a bit of, as I say, I'm a property anorak. So when I see a good storage solution, I'm like, oh my God, you got to see the storage solution. And that's what people like. But sometimes that has more of a place on Instagram than it might on YouTube. So you have to categorize your content properly.
Yeah.
And that's
That's a good
important as
point.
well. If I were to keep putting up stuff on my YouTube channel that's irrelevant to what my subscribers are expecting, then my numbers will start to fall off.
Yeah.
But every house that we have will have at least 2,000 views.
That's good going. Yeah. I mean,
That's pretty good going. And I find when I do the evergreen stuff, people seem to be less interested in it. They are specifically there for property.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a data point at the end of the day. You
It
mentioned
is.
Instagram, and like what other platforms do you use? Do you use them all, or is it?
We use them all. We use them all. So, for example, we use Facebook, we use Instagram, we use TikTok, we use LinkedIn. Okay. TikTok is an emerging one for us. It's not necessarily where all of our attention is. At the moment, we're more so focused on growing our Instagram channel. And that's very appropriate to houses and very appropriate to our position as having an opinion and a certain level of authority on property.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what we're actually going to, I also do this property chat on my local radio station every fortnight. And usually I'll put that content on as well onto one or all of the channels. And we're going to start doing more vlogs around that so for example, recently it was, the 3 hours of refurb or the 3 hours of when you're selling a next rental property.
Yeah.
These are practical solutions that it's just easy reach stuff, but it's local and it's relevant. And, we get tremendous feedback from it and tremendous response to stuff that we put up on our channels. And I'm always in awe and I'm always appreciative of it because the minute that you start taking the stuff for granted, forget it.
Yeah.
At that point, you start taking shortcuts, you start copy and pasting somebody else's content, you stop being authentic, it stops being why people turned up there in the first place. And then you have to sit down and talk to yourself and say, where have I gone wrong here? It has to be, although it's not Joanne Lavelle's Instagram page, it's Michael Lavelle Estate Agent's page. It's important that it's real and it's meaningful and that it's authentic.
It's interesting you say that because I know a chap called Daniel Priestley that you might have heard of. He's kind of a branding expert, and I did a thing with him in the UK a few years ago. But if you search Daniel Priestley on social media, you'll find like he's got a huge following now. But he talks about the difference between a company brand and a personal brand. And he's got some interesting thoughts on it because you mentioned there that the Instagram channel is the Michael Lavelle Estate Agents. But what he was saying is if you look at, for example, Real Madrid Football Club, okay, that has, so many million followers, but the top players will have hundreds of millions of followers in comparison to that, you know? And
Yeah.
so the personal brand is often more powerful than the corporate brand. If you look at Apple, which is obviously one of the most valuable companies in the world, Apple has, you know, a couple of million followers, but Tim Cook will have tens of millions of followers in comparison. And that's the kind of thing. So it's interesting how, I mean, nowadays, a lot of people like to keep their head down. They, you know, obviously coming from a PR background, you're not shy to kind of go out and put yourself out there. A lot of people I find are reluctant to have anything to do with building a personal brand. But I think in this day and age, it has become absolutely essential that you're the face of the business, and therefore you have to be the person with the brand out there. And so I don't know I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Well, the first thing is, you're absolutely right. And people want human connection. Okay. People would rather watch a person cook a dinner than read through the ingredients and the method and figure out cooking the dinner by pictures. Okay.
Yeah.
Video content is the way forward. And, you know, luckily, I don't think there's an AI plan to replace Joanne anytime soon. So it's me, you got me for the time being. So, but personal connection and a human relationship is really, really important. However, you talk about Tom Cook. There's no way that Tom Cook is putting up his family's Thanksgiving pictures on his Instagram page. He has a public space and he has a private space.
Yeah.
The really, really important thing when you're putting yourself at the front of your brand is that you have boundaries.
Yeah.
And
Otherwise, it absorbs your life. Yeah.
well, it does absorb your life, and you could easily let it. So I go every Sunday for a walk with my pals, my buddies, into the forest. I could spend the whole time taking pictures for my feed, or I could just switch off and go for a walk. You know, you have to have a balance. But I will also say, as a woman who's got a social media profile for work and who is in business, it is important to have boundaries, to set them and to keep them. Because that's life. You're not all about what's on Instagram. And I am not one of the people who gets up in the morning and takes a picture of my breakfast and posts it, because that's not
you. Yeah.
that's not me. And that, you know, I think that you have to create, you know, a stop and a start situation there and know what you're on there for.
Yeah.
So the boundary is really, really important, and knowing when to stop when you're putting too much of your own stuff on there, because it's not about what Joanne had for breakfast. It's what kitchen Joanne is in that would be lovely for having breakfast.
Yeah,
if you get the difference.
Yeah, I know. I think people are there to be educated, and it's, you know, a little bit of personality is good, but they're not there to, you know, to know about your breakfast. They're there to know about, you know, what it is why something should be bought or why something should be paid attention to. And, you know, obviously today what we're here to do is bring people's awareness to just the power of social media and the fact that it has transformed the business. In terms of, you know, if somebody out there was thinking about doing this kind of thing, like going into YouTube or something like that, do you have any sort of suggested tips or, you know, just a few pointers as to what's the best way to start to grow your channel or to kind of build it up?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is to ask for help and to not assume that you can hit the ground running on day one. Boom, set up. Wow, there's my channel and off I go. It takes an evolution to get a channel. And I mean, that's not to say that my channel is finished growing or that I know everything. I have a fantastic guy who helps me with my YouTube channel. Okay. And his name's Kieran. And he is a YouTube guy.
Okay.
And he knows what Joanne needs to be doing. And, you know, he, like anybody else that you ask for help and anybody else that you trust for help, he will guide you right. And the YouTube situation, it's so multi-layered. It's down to your thumbnails, what you choose for your thumbnails, everything looking the same way, everything looking uniform. And you've got to decide, why are you there in the first place?
Yeah.
In order for there to be continuity and consistency in your content. Because if you're a bit scattered and you're all over the place, well, then it's just messy. And what your YouTube channel must not be is messy.
Yeah.
It has to be smart, it has to be relevant, it has to be coherent, and it has to be honest. Okay. So like, I'll go on and I'll do a video and it'll be messy Joanne Day, but that's okay. So long as the content is right. You know what I mean? And so long as it's relevant to people. And that's just the way it is. But the benefits, you got to think about what are the benefits to your business. So if it's just for ego, well, then that's a different kind of a channel. Okay. That's
course,
just
yeah.
an ego channel. And so long as it's not for ego, because mine is not, it's for benefiting my client. It helps. Okay. So we were sitting down here this morning talking about, what are the benefits to the client? And they're numerous. Can you imagine, for one thing, having access to 24/7 viewings? It is
Yeah.
literally, and sometimes we'll look at a spike, and there was a spike a month ago, for example, in South America. And why was there spike? I mean, not a big spike, just a little spike, because a woman who was buying a house from us is from South America, and she'd sent the link down there, and her entire family and friends
Checking it
were
out.
watching like mad. But can you
That's
imagine that it can actually bring people together, that even when there's somebody they love on the far side of the world, they can still get a sense of what home they're going to buy? That's kind of special to me as well. So it's
Yes.
giving that access, and that's kind of really special as well. The other thing is, from my business, I don't have first viewings anymore.
Interesting.
Any viewing that I have, well, we'll say 95% of them, it's a second viewing. The first time they come through the door, it's the second viewing, because they've already done the first viewing on the channel.
Online. Yeah, yeah.
And if for anybody who's watching this, if they haven't done one of my virtual viewings, it's literally as though you're like sitting over my shoulder, watching what I'm seeing, and I'm pointing out things. And I point out bad things as well as good things if it's important to the property.
Yeah.
I'll do a virtual viewing on a property that is in a heap, because I want you to see the extent to which it's in a heap, so that you don't come to a viewing expecting to be able to move in. So I'm telling you, you're going to have to rewire this. You're going to have to change the whatever it is here.
You're managing expectations. Yeah.
Managing expectations. So it means that when people come to the property, they've already been given a lot of information and knowledge. And so they're into the second viewing. So I'm actually propelling people straight into the deeper part of our negotiation straight away, because what they're doing is they're going there to confirm what they already know. So my clients really value that.
It sounds like a more effective way, actually, because there's not a whole load of tire kickers. You've actually got people that have been through, and so they're actually there with clear intentions, as opposed to, the old days where people would just, like, out of curiosity, they would come into the open house and they'd be looking around and all that kind of stuff. I can see the benefit of it there. Yeah, hugely.
I always say to my clients, you won't have tire kickers with us, because if they want to kick around your house, they can do it in their pajamas in their own house.
Yeah.
And once they get that, they're like, yeah, I like that. And I said, and I won't have you tidy up unnecessarily, because whoever comes is coming with serious intent.
Yeah.
And that's very compelling, And the other thing about it is the trust and the credibility. That's really important. So important, because they know that we're doing the best job. We're casting our net out as wide as possible. You spoke about all the channels. We're on all the channels, because that's what you need to be. But all of the channels signpost back to our virtual viewing at the center. So that's in the middle, and all the other things are layers around it. And so it's all coming back to that. So my clients want to know, anybody wants to know, if they're selling a property, they want to know that they sold it well, and that anybody who needed to know about that property knew about it. Would that be fair? And we want to make sure that that's the case. And then take it a step further. Not only do they know about it, they get a look inside.
I think that's really powerful. Yeah. I mean, your advisor, has that made a big difference?
Huge difference. I would never have brought the YouTube channel to what it is now if he hadn't contacted me. And he sent me a video introduction. He said, hi, you do video. Obviously I had a channel. We had probably about 500 subscribers. And so he sent me a video. He said, look, you're obviously on video, so I'm going to video myself. Hello. So we had a couple of hello videos. And I thought that was really cute. And he really gets YouTube. It's his anorak space, and there was no way. I mean, I was amazed when we got 1,000 subscribers. I was blown away when we got 2,000 subscribers. Now we're at 7,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's phenomenal. There were a couple of real corner turners. There was one property, Joe Biden, his ancestors' burial places up here in the Northeast in the Cooley Peninsula. And very fortuitously, I got the sale of a cottage beside that Kilwara cemetery, and the same time that Joe Biden was coming up
Okay.
here to Dundalk.
Thousands of
Okay.
views, yeah.
So I put up on the channel, hi, I'm here, right behind me. It's where Joe Biden's ancestors are. Oh my God. There was this 50-50 split in the camp. Half of them Democrats. Oh yeah, Joe, he's Irish, he's American Irish, great. The other half, I'm not happy that you mentioned Joe. It was so polarized, and there was so much debate, discussion, and chat and everything. It was great.
So
It was great for my channel.
Up. Yeah, the video blew.
It blew up. I think that we had nearly 250,000 views on that property.
Wow. Yeah, so, I've noticed that actually. Polarization is one of the strongest things in social media in general.
Yeah.
If you're picking a topic to talk about, if you pick something that everyone agrees on, it won't get that much engagement. But if you get something that there's two opposing views, you'll get massive engagement because they have a go at each other and they want to have a pop at the other opinion.
But just make sure that you're not in the middle.
Yeah. I've been in the middle occasionally on TikTok.
Yeah.
TikTok
and you know something? People, I don't know whether everybody intends to be mean when they go on to that keyboard moment. Some people do intend to be mean, and that's fine. We can deal with that block. And some people just their constructive criticism voice is the volume set too high.
Yeah.
And that's not trying to be mean. That's just people who are a little bit direct in their communication. But one thing that I will say, you asked advice that I would give to somebody who's thinking about getting more into YouTube and social media. Decide what's acceptable to you. If there's stuff that's not acceptable to you, switch it off. Block the person. You do not have to tolerate bad manners if you're working on social media. It goes back to your boundaries. If somebody's being, not nice, well, then they have no place on my channels. And I would always say that. And we've put a lot of time and focus into that because it's important for us as a team. It's important for me in my own mental space and in my physical safety space.
You don't need the grief. Yeah, I've seen it. Like one thing I would say is, if you are going into social media, what you're saying is absolutely right. But I do think you need to develop a thicker skin because you will inevitably end up in the crosshairs of some comment that bites or hurts. And I put one of my first videos to ever go viral on TikTok. There was about 200 comments in one night. And I can remember going to bed, having posted it, and not thinking that this was going to blow up at all. It was completely a fluke. And the next morning, 58,000 views.
Wow.
And I can remember 200 comments. And I started going through them. And it was a mixed bag of, Gavin, can I come work for you? Was half of them. And then the other half was that I was a complete twat and that I, like, what was I doing?
How dare you have an opinion? Yeah.
Yeah. And it was, but that was why it blew up, is because of the polarization.
Yeah.
And that's, you mentioned the fact that you have, probably a team that help you put together the videos and everything like that. What does that look like in terms, editing and all that kind of stuff?
The editing. Okay. So when I go to a house, it's me on my own. Okay. I got a new camera. I'll show it to you. So my car was broken into last week. And so I had to go and get a new camera. So use every crisis as an opportunity. So I got a new GoPro.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I've got one of those. Yeah. The one that rotates
so this
around.
is the new 3, Osmo 3. And we just got that set up at the weekend. So I've all started to get all excited about that. Again, property anorak. And now I'm a camera anorak too. And so I just go on my own. Sometimes somebody will come with me. If it's a tricky house, if it's big, if I want to do a particularly big production to it. Increasingly, it's the case that we want to bring more layers to our content. But as often as not, it's me with plus one other. And I'll bring the stuff back. We use Dropbox a lot to transfer files. I have a photographer friend who does the editing. So all of our virtual viewings have a fairly standard template, which is important as well because consistency is important. Yeah. And then he puts it up on the channel and then we SEO it. It's really important to SEO it properly. Obviously, YouTube and Google stablemates. So we have to make sure that everything's SEO'd well. We basically want to make sure that if you search house for sale Dundalk or apartment for sale Dundalk or Carlingford, whatever it is, that you're finding us. and we are consistently performing very highly on searches. Okay. So even the YouTube channel feeds into that as well. And the way the world is, if you Google, I don't know, yoga socks, you're not going to see a full list of every single pair of yoga socks for sale in the world. You're going to see the yoga socks that Google has seen performing well. So therefore, all of our content has to perform well. It all has to be search engine optimized so that it corresponds with the searches that people make, and so that Google says, oh, people liked Joanne's videos, we're going to push her up in the search outcomes.
Got it.
So we SEO the stuff. So if you click on one of our videos, you'll see the description. That's all SEO'd. Okay. And then off it goes. It's set off. For example, there's one that's premiered for this evening. There's certain times that it's best to launch a virtual viewing and a video. Yeah. So we work to when people are most likely to be paying attention, and we launch it, premiere it, and off it goes. So it's a combination of me and then getting help from people, because you can't do everything. That is the bottom line. You can't do everything. So, and then it goes out. So basically that turnaround time, it's always very important that I say to my clients that we can turn around quickly, because when people are ready to go, they want to go. Yeah. Hit the ground, get going. So we respond to that.
And how many videos, like a month, would you be putting up?
Oh, it depends on the time of year.
Yeah, I guess. But I mean, in terms of the work volume that you've got.
So for example, this week, I will create probably 6 to 10 videos.
Wow. 6 in a week.
This week is particularly busy. Normally, I'll do maybe 4 to 6.
That's a lot, though. Yeah. So I can see why there's constant stream of views for your channel, because you're putting up a lot of content. You're putting up a lot more content, like vloggers, like Casey Neistat was only doing one video a day.
But then you see, you also have to cross purpose. You have to multi-purpose your content. So when I'm at a property, there's no point in my work just doing a YouTube channel. Okay. When I'm at the property, I'm doing a FaceTime live. Okay. When I'm at the property, I'm taking pictures for nice Instagram inspiration. I'm doing a 30-second short. Okay. Or I'm doing a 60-second short. And I'm doing stuff for TikTok, the cute little rock around the place, So in one visit, I've got to create all those pieces of content.
There's a bit of work there. I know
it's a lot, because you have to go in like, it's okay, I've got to run 6 marathons here and get this done, but that's what property needs. Like the thing of just sticking your house up on a property portal and putting a sign outside, that's not enough anymore.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I mean, it's the new, a lot of people don't want to accept it, but it is the new way of doing business, is that you have to have a footprint, like an internet, social media footprint. I'm conscious of time, Joanne, but one thing I wanted to ask you, and it's something that I'm starting to dive into, but you might be interested in this as well. And I've got a guy that I'm hoping to get on the podcast in a couple of weeks' time, but it's automation around the production of videos and all that. And this particular chap that I've been following, he's just figured out, and he posted today, how to have all of your YouTube video stuff translated to a different language and voice overed, and so all done automatically, so that you literally make a video in English, and then tomorrow morning it will be uploaded to your YouTube channel in Spanish or in some other language or something like that. It's just amazing what's happening, like in terms of artificial intelligence and all this kind of stuff.
That is. And I mean, the whole AI thing, I'm just so busy keeping up with my blogs and my 30-second shorts that don't even get me started on that. Somebody said, Joanne, why don't you do a podcast? And I'm like, I don't get to go home at night.
Yeah. I know we don't have 27 hours a day, unfortunately.
No, but you have to cut your cloth. You definitely have to cut your cloth.
Yeah.
There's no point in doing things, pardon the term, half-arsed or half-cooked. If I'm going to do something, I'll do it well or go home, You're
absolutely right. Joanne, let's start to wind things up. In terms of the economy, I mean, we've had a difficult period in many respects with the interest rate hikes and all that kind of stuff. But the housing market still seems to be performing very, very strongly. I mean, demand will outstrip supply for a long time. Do you have any views or opinions on, what the future holds?
We're still going. This year has defied the expectations that people had coming into the year. We have more stock this year than last year.
Interesting.
And that's good. But I mean, literally, there's still such a latent demand that's having the obvious outcome impact on prices. We're selling new homes as well as secondhand homes. And it's the same across both property transaction types. Still, though, we find that properties are taking too long to sell. But
Because of the legal system, is it?
the legal system, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a whole different podcast.
Yeah. Let's not go into that.
Yeah, but it's still, property values are exceeding expectations again and again. And people are starting to realize that vendors are starting to realize that they've got to step up to the mark as well. Get the product right, you get the price right.
Yeah, it's so true. A lot of the time people have sort of, I suppose, their expectations are set a little bit too high, but they don't want to do any work for it. And so, they hear about prices that certain person achieved down the road or whatever, and they think, oh, that's what mine's worth as well.
Yeah.
But there might have been a fair bit of work done prior to putting it on the market.
Like I always say, no two houses are the same. And no two buyer expectations are the same. So in our work, it's a lot to do with managing expectations and guiding our clients that they need to do stuff. So I've just come away from a house now, and I've convinced him to move all the furniture around and to do a whole lot of different things. He's not going to have to spend any money, and he's not going to have to do anything radical. He just has to give his house a purpose, because he's downsizing and he's got all these rooms that have no purpose. Right. So he just has to move things. And when I go back now, I'll go back next week, and suddenly he'll say, oh yeah, look at the space that I've got. Look at all these things. So it's, vendors do have to work their property and manage their product as well, just as much as we have to.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I know somebody who was selling a very, very rundown property. I mean, it was kind of, in multiple bed sits, very tatty. And it looked, the before and after photographs are incredible. The before, it was like, oh my God, who would touch a house like that?
Yeah.
And then what she did was she had it staged, where they brought in the people with the furniture and all that and the bedspreads, and absolute total transformation.
Night and day, I'd say. So.
Night and day. And she did really well on the price. And I can remember when she was telling me this, I was like, what? Like it was hard to believe that they were the same property. That's how different it was,
Yeah.
So
I work with a company from North Dublin, staging your home for sale. And I mean, they do a fantastic job. It's not going to work for every property.
Yeah.
And not every property needs it, but it can make a huge, huge difference.
It can. Joanne, in terms of people, where can they find you? I mean, I'm going to put links in the show notes, but what's the best way to get a hold of you if somebody has a burning question for Joanne Lavelle?
Well, the best way is to get us on our website, lavelles.ie. And when you go on there, you'll find all of our contact details. Lavelle Property is sort of generally the handle that you'll find us on. And our YouTube channel, of course. So if you just Michael Lavelle Property YouTube, you should find us fairly easily. We try to make it as easy as possible to find us.
Of course.
Yeah.
Search engine optimization and all that.
Absolutely, yeah.
In terms of the final question, so Joanne, you have an opportunity to give some advice to much younger Joanne, who is just finishing university and is about to go out into a career. What was your advice would you be giving yourself now, looking back and knowing what you know?
I suppose really the first thing is the advice that my dad has always given to me, and he still gives it to me because it's still relevant. It's always make a connection. Okay. It's not about you. It's about the other person. So make a connection with that person. Look for it. See what you have in common with that person. Or if you're showing them a house, see what their needs are or what their understanding is, and connect with them at whatever level they need to be at, because that's so important. And that filters through in all that we do. It's about making a connection with people. So I'm conscious that people who are in their 20s now, the way that they communicate and connect is very, very different. And it's a challenge for the rest of us to understand how that's going to translate into 5 or 10 years when they're the business leaders. Yeah. I don't know how that's going to be.
It's
You
a
know?
good question, actually, because I've been speaking to a young guy that he's an internet entrepreneur, we'll call him,
Mhm.
and he sells a lot of things over his Instagram channel, and everything is done in the direct messages, everything.
Yeah.
And I was kind of speaking to him about a couple of different things, and I asked him, what do you think of this? I showed him an email from me or something, and he was like, so many words. That was his,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, I
Yeah.
hear you.
So
And
many
so,
words. So I worry about that.
yeah, it's
Like
the attention
I'm the
span. Yeah,
person that I still want to write a couple of decent paragraphs of copy, proper written copy on my properties. Okay. And I enjoy doing that. I enjoy the writing, but so many words compared to what the next group of people are coming on
yeah,
to. They're not even going to bother reading my wonderful copy. They're just going to be like, swipe on, yes, no, you know? So yeah, I suppose really the thing is so find a connection and don't be insular. It can't always be about the technology. It shouldn't always be the technology. Don't forget the human beside you or in front of you.
yeah. Very important.
To me, I think that that's a thing. Also, always learn on the job. I always say every day is a school day, but more than that, in my 30s, I went back to college. In my 40s, I went back to college. I'm currently finishing off a diploma in something at the moment. Always be learning and be, even if it's not necessary, it doesn't have to be a money-making course. It doesn't have to be a thing that you'll stick on the wall and say, this is what I've achieved.
Yeah,
Just for your own knowledge and your credibility of being able to speak about something or your comfort of being able to understand it. Always learn.
yeah. Always be learning is a common one that I
You
advise.
know, I mean, if I'm speaking to somebody in their 20s, they're just about to hold themselves out of, they've just have finished probably their primary degree, and they'll think, that's it, I never have to look at a copybook again. Wrong, wrong. Always learn in some way or other. And I suppose really now that everything is on the internet, always remember that. And
Yeah,
whatever you do, there's a footprint of that. So
an
don't be a
idiot.
fool. Don't be a,
Yeah, be
if
be be aware that it'll never. Yeah, it's possibly always going to be up there, and
always going
so
to be up there. So it'll
um,
always catch you out if you're unkind, if you are that keyboard warrior, if you think it's funny, that's not funny. It's there and that will stay with you. So think about what you stand for and get it right first time round and you won't have to change it.
that's great advice and a great way to wind up our discussion. Joanne, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today. I'm going to go and put links in the show notes for people to find you and things like
Great.
that. And so, wishing you the best of luck.
Likewise. And thanks for inviting me onto the podcast.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Joanne Lavelle. One of the things that occurred to me towards the end was that old nugget that I've always mentioned whenever I'm talking to people about the property business. And that is that property is essentially a people business. And as myself and Joanne agreed there towards the end of the interview, it is all about making a connection. And so remember that anytime you're dealing with a purchaser or a seller or anything like that, remember that you're dealing with a person and make the connection. And so, guys, I'm going to leave you. Those of you who are watching on the YouTube, you can get a load of my new puppy. And other than that, I'll see you next week. I hope to be in top form and back producing our weekly podcast. Take care.